Hi readers, it's Lori. Welcome back to my channel, Books, Ink, and Paper. Today is my to read or not to read video, the second in this series that I started last month, where I've been going through my bookshelves little by little when I have a moment and really thinking about what I want to keep and what I do not want to keep any longer. And so today I have 4 books to take a look at and to decide what I'm going to unhaul and what I think I will read. So let's get started. The first one is a book that I have read. It's called Undercurrents by Martha Manning, A Life Beneath the Surface. I read this many years ago. It was recommended to me by my niece, who at the time was in her at college in her psychology degree. It came out in 1994. So it's an old memoir published by HarperCollins, and it follows Martha Manning's descent into depression, a very severe depression. Martha is a mother and wife and psychologist, a child to parents that possibly as I recall, needed a little bit more care. And how she comes out of that depression and how she chooses treatments that are a little bit controversial still, but she does decide to undergo electroshock therapy or ECTs, therapies, ECT. And so that's a pretty extreme treatment for depression, but she was, as I recall, having read this a long time ago, really, really depressed. But what I loved about it is that it shows how she had to still try to function in the world and in her life with her family and in her work, and all the while really at war with this depression. I really did love it. The question is, will I read it again ever, or do I want to pass it along? The next one is You Are a Badass at Making Money by Jen Sincero. I read this, I think, last year or the year before. I did underline some things in this book. It looks like, make a few little notes in the margins of this book. So I have a decision to make, because I don't love unhauling books to little free libraries or to other people where I've, kind of written some notes and really looked at what was important to me. So I need to think about that for a second before I decide what to do with it. Now, this is another book that I bought it was written in 2008, and I think this copyright for this paperback is 2009. So I bought this a long time ago as well, and I've not read it. And this is The Billionaire's Vinegar, which is the mystery of the world's most expensive bottle of wine. Now, this is about the Chateau Lafite Bordeaux, which was supposedly owned by Thomas Jefferson and sold at auction for God knows $156,000. But what was sort of the journey of that bottle of wine is the subject of this book. I did start it once, and I had a little bit of trouble at that time getting into it. But I do recognize that in 2009, I wasn't reading a lot. I was in a particularly challenging busy job, not challenging, but busy work that I did, and I just didn't get to read a lot. And when I did, it needed to be pretty quick. It needed to catch my attention and go pretty quickly. This got a lot of great buzz when it came out, and it's a true mystery. And so it does seem like that was what caught my eye about this book. So that's a decision. Am I going to read that, or am I going to pass it along? And I could probably pass it along to my son, and he'd be very happy with it. Then at a book fair a few years ago, I got this very sort of tattered copy. Here's the original jacket cover piece inside of it. Like somebody, I guess they thought maybe whoever picked this up needed to see the jacket cover to see what it was about. But it is a treasure of great mysteries that was compiled, curated by Howard Haycraft. See, I took my glasses off and now I need them. Howard Haycraft and John Beecroft. It was published by Simon & Schuster, and it is a pretty old copy, 1957. And I'm sure the reason I picked it up was because one of them is a short story by, well, I guess it's a short novel, Murder in the Calais Coach by Agatha Christie. There's one by Earl Stanley Gardner, Mary Roberts Reinhardt, Ellery Queen, some of the mystery writers that we no longer have around, Dorothy L. Sayers and Gail Marsh. Some of my favorites, Daphne du Maurier, Rebecca is in here, which is interesting because I have another copy of that. But it's pretty small print, and it is a very old copy of volume 1. It's probably no longer in print, so that's something to research before I make my decision. So let me do a little research on that and on the ratings of the ones that I haven't read, and I'll be right back. Okay, I've decided, I think, what I'm going to do. As much as I loved Undercurrents, I don't see myself reading this again. I do have a couple of people in mind that I could offer it to that are therapists and friends who are in this work nearby. I may see if they want it, and if not, I'll put it in the little free library. It's probably very helpful to people who are living with someone with depression or experiencing it themselves. And so, yeah, I feel good about unhauling that. I'm not going to read it again. You are a badass at making money. Let me be clear about something I didn't mention before, I don't think. I didn't love this book. So there's no question I'm not going to read it again. Ever. I had a lot of problems with it. My underlining is pretty frequent, but my notes in the book are not as frequent. So, I mean, there's a couple little things in here, but I feel like I'd be okay putting it in the little free library. And if somebody doesn't like the notes, then they don't like the notes. And there's nothing personal, though. So I'm okay with unhauling that in some way that makes sense. The Billionaire's Vinegar, I looked up a little bit more, and I don't think I said that Benjamin Wallace is the author of this. So there's a couple of things that intrigue me about this. It doesn't have the greatest rating on Goodreads. I think it's like 3.5, which isn't terrible. But it does seem to have sort of a following of people who really like it and people who don't. It also has a controversy around it, and there was apparently a lawsuit filed around it. So I'm curious about that. I don't want to spend a lot of time looking at that now. I don't think I want to know that before I read it, because that might be something that will keep me compelled to read it. So I'm more interested in this than I thought I would be. And it does have sort of the twists are, did the Nazis end up with the bottle of wine? Did it end up in Paris somehow? Like, there's a lot of controversy about what happened to it. People do seem to think it was well researched. So that's a maybe so far. Now, this is an interesting little book. I did find this edition. It is not clear to me yet if it's still in print. I also, when I was telling you about some of the authors, and I said Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, that's actually in volume 2. So that would not be in that, because I thought I didn't see it. I wasn't sure what happened. And then I realized that at the top of this, in the contents page, they actually tell you what's in volume 1 and in volume 2. So some of the authors I read to you were not in this volume 1. Also, I discovered that this particular version of this novel, or this short story collection, was published in 1957. And I think that this was the first edition of this curation of mysteries. I did also see that people, I mean, it has fairly decent reviews. I can't remember what the total rating was on Goodreads, but people seem to think that volume 1 was better than volume 2, which is hard for me to believe, because volume 2 has Dorothy L. Sayers and Gail Marsh and Daphne du Maurier, but okay, everybody's entitled to their own opinion. It's not in great shape is my only concern about this. I feel though like this is pretty discolored, but it's possible that I could clean this up and spruce it up a little bit, because a lot of this might just be wear and tear. So the choices for me are these two. I'm definitely not going to keep the other two. So do I keep these? Will I read these? I feel pretty confident that I will read this. I might unhaul it after I read it, but I feel pretty confident that these authors intrigue me, and I love some of them. I've read a lot of their work over my lifetime, and The Murder in the Calais Coach is the full version of that. It's not a condensed volume. So that I'm going to keep. I'm going to keep that for a bit. I feel like I will read that. The Billionaire's Vinegar. So what's interesting too about this is when I bought this, I wasn't particularly a wine drinker. I drank other things at that time, but I didn't really know a lot about wine. I didn't really love wine at that time, except for Chardonnay. And then at some point, as happens often, my taste buds changed, and my desire to try wines changed and to learn more about them. And so I love wine now, and I love finding new information about wine. And I think I'm going to give this a go. But I'm going to commit to reading it within the next few months. And if I don't like it, then I'm not going to keep it. I'll probably give it to my son, see if he wants to read it, or maybe, somebody else in my family that loves wine. But I'm going to keep it, but with the caveat that it has to be read soon or it's going to go. So if I keep kind of seeing it and moving it around and not doing anything with it, I need to unhaul it. Okay, so out of the 4, I'm unhauling 2, keeping 2. I mean, that's not bad. It's going to help, right? Every little bit helps. I think I really unhauled more than that last month, but you know how it goes. Thanks for joining me today on my To Read or Not to Read series for February. I am having a good time really thinking about clearing the shelves and, really being intentional about setting a date to read some of these books that have been here for a while and getting rid of the books that I'm never going to read again, clearly. I just find that I put them back on the shelf when I'm finished reading them, and then I don't even think about whether I'm going to pick them up again. I'm not even really mindful of that. And since this is a year of mindfulness for me, it's a good practice for me to just go through the shelves every now and again and create a stack of books that I need to make a decision about whether to keep or not to keep. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you're going through your books more intentionally and deciding what you want to keep or not keep, what you're going to read or not read. If you haven't already, I'd love it if you'd subscribe to my channel, and I'm so pleased. I had a surge of new subscribers this last month, so that was lovely. Like it, give it a thumbs up if you do like it, and as always, happy reading. Bye.